everyone.
I'm back, baby.
It's Jake Ciely.
I'm great. Everybody else sucks.
Oh, hey.
Oh, no. It's every nightmare I've ever had.
Excuse me?
It's time to check the link.
Pretty crazy, huh? But it doesn't matter because none of this has anything to do with the show.
You know what? You just made the list.
Oh, wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
It's all in football.
Sure, we talk about it all the time. Really? No.
What's up, you ducks? All in football. Week 3 of the fantasy football season is already here. Talk rankings. A lot of news to get to today. As a reminder, it's rankings to a degree. We're not really saying like, oh, this person, this person, this person. We're going to debate some of the more interesting players of the week, try to help you make decisions. Hopefully you're not 0-2, but hey, you know what? If you are, there's still plenty of time left. I've seen 0-5 teams make the playoffs before, Jeff, but make sure you're following Jeff at Jeff Ratcliffe. Make sure you check out his work on FTN, which, by the way, you can still get 20% off with code ALLIN. And you can still get a first free month at The Athletic if you go to theathletic.com/BetsTV. The name of this show, well, the name of this network, but all capitals, first free month over there. Jeff, do you have any 0-2 teams?
Oh, yeah.
See, even we do. I have an 0-2 team. I'm actually 0-2 in the flex, as a matter of fact. I got basically obliterated both weeks. I think I faced the highest scoring team both weeks, and sometimes these things happen, but that's why I love doubleheaders. But Jeff, do you want to start with? There's two options here, two quarterbacks we got to talk about. Tua or Justin Fields? Who do you want to start with?
I think we got to give the people what they want. We got to start with Justin Fields.
Yeah, I think we got to start with Justin Fields. I agree with you. Justin Fields officially the starter. Not a surprise with the injury situation. This isn't how we wanted it to happen, but we all, for fantasy purposes, did want it to happen. I had already put out the projections with him as the starter, no Andy Dalton this week, Jeff, and it was at QB 12. And I have to tell you, I think the ceiling is higher. I think the floor is certainly lower. Let's talk about some of the names I have right in front of him are Aaron Rodgers and Stafford. Some of the names right behind them are Ryan Tannehill and Kirk Cousins. But I think this is what you're saying, at least in my opinion, Jeff. You're going into week 3. Justin Fields, we know. We know if you said Justin Fields versus Jalen Hurts coming out of college, Fields is the better passer, better accuracy. He's known for it. He's got the arm. Similar arms, but he had the accuracy. He's got the same pocket struggle issues. He's got the same basically level of the NFL issues that Hurts saw, some of the inaccuracies, some of the poor decisions. But we know the rushing is similar. We know you get a free touchdown, potentially 2 with his legs. The floor is there where you could see what we just saw last week when he came in to replace Dalton and it goes sideways. So are you as aggressive as I am? And if so, does it depend on the makeup of your team of whether or not you're willing to start him? Or is it just, hey, we've been waiting, get him in the lineup?
Well, and I think you make a good point about last week with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts did not have a good day with his arm, and he was a top 10 fantasy quarterback. You know, it's that massive floor with the running ability that's so appealing here. We do expect him to lean on that running ability. And I'm not going to take anything away from last week as well. He was thrown into action there. The plan was Andy Dalton was going to play that whole game. Maybe you see Fields for a snap or two, but being thrown into the mix really doesn't tell us much. I'm maybe not quite as bullish as you. I have him at 14, though, so I guess you love him. I hate him at 12 and 14, whatever. It's a joke. It's a bad joke. I'm getting like all that. Literally, since you've said that, Jake, I get it all the time. Like, hey, I know you're really low on Justin Fields. Like, I have him at 14. He's a priority streamer this week, but you're right about situation as well. If I have Kyler Murray, I'm not starting Justin Fields.
You want to talk about the craziness? I saw somebody ask me Dak or Justin Fields.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we're not going that far, but let me put it this way. If this is your team, Jeff, and we've seen Ryan Tannehill's first 2 weeks, the touchdowns haven't been there. He could have had one that we know A.J. Brown dropped the touchdown that he could have had. There was a lot more play action in week 2. But if it's your team, and let's say your team is constructed well, you're not 0-2 or you're not shooting for upside, you just know you have a good team. Do you play it safe with Tannehill or do you plug in Fields?
I actually do put in Fields in that particular situation. And I actually threw this out, Jake, and I think if you're watching right now, this is a really interesting thought exercise that you could try out maybe this weekend during the NFL games. Don't look at your fantasy scores. Don't look at your DFS
I don't ever
results.
look until Tuesday.
I don't either. And you know what I got out of this, Jake? I was actually really surprised on Monday. Somebody was like, oh, Tannehill sucks. And I'm like, I thought he had a good game. I watched that whole game and I was like, and then I'm like, oh yeah, duh. He didn't have a passing touchdown, but that didn't mean he sucked. That was actually a really nice rebound performance. Had the great connection with Julio Jones. A.J. Brown had 2 or 3 catches he left on the field in that game. But I think it changes your perception, and it also can be really helpful for fantasy because now that tells me, okay, people are low on Ryan Tannehill because of fantasy points, so I can go out and try and buy low on him. Now, also, though, if I drafted Dak Prescott, there is no chance in hell I would have drafted Justin Fields. I think a lot of people set themselves up for this one. If you have a top 5, top 7 quarterback, you don't need a second quarterback. This is not the NFL where you need a backup, because you can go to waivers every single week and find somebody. But if you're in a situation where you drafted Kirk Cousins, Matt Ryan, and Justin Fields, or even Ryan Tannehill to a lesser extent, then yeah, I am going to be using Justin Fields. I don't think this is just a novelty thing either. I legitimately buy in on him as a borderline quarterback one.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's a really good way to put it, too. A similar situation is that's actually where I get a lot of my buy lows is that perception out there. Mm-hmm. And watching a lot of the Eagles game and even watching it knowing that Jalen Reagor stepped out by inches and could have had a touchdown, I still I watched the game and then I saw the box score and I was like, I thought he still had more than that. Like just by watching the game, like it felt like he still had more than he did. So it's a really good exercise. So let's talk about another situation we just had today. We expected Tua was in the air at best. He is officially out for week 3. Will Fuller is back, so who knows what's going on with him. He's actually at practice, though. But Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. And it's not clear in the fact that we knew Parker and Waddle were okay because Fuller wasn't there. Now all 3 are there. There's Brissett at quarterback. Is there? I'll put it this way to you, Jeff. Is there any wide receiver from the Dolphins that even reaches wide receiver 3 level for you this week?
Can the Raiders defense play wide receiver for us this week? Are they cross eligible? I don't really want any piece of it, unfortunately, because I do love me some Jalen Waddle. I like what we've seen so far. Devontae Parker has been solid for this team. And then it's the unknown of Fuller, but Tua, is he going to be one of these quarterbacks where he can't stay healthy? I don't know at this point. It might be too early. Remember, we once thought Matthew Stafford was injury prone, and now he's turned out to be one of the more durable quarterbacks out there. But it is quite unfortunate. This is just one where there's not much appeal here. I definitely want to attack this if I'm looking to stream defenses. The Raiders they're still pretty widely available. Everybody went after Carolina. By the way, people, 12% on a defense. Seriously, I don't care if they're Carolina or yes. 12% of fab on a defense? Like I wouldn't spend 12% on an 85 Bears defense. Really? But yeah, the Raiders could be an option there against Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, it's funny you said that. And I at the beginning of this week's ranks columns, I kind of gave people like an insight to our minds. And I said, this would be like you trying to make me an expert in your job in 3 paragraphs. But I'm trying to give you like a little bit of insight. But one of the things I bring up is kind of what you said about Carolina is it's the thinking ahead. Like you wouldn't forget the 12%, forget 2%. I never like to stash a second defense, but if you have deeper benches, 7 spots, and you don't need it, and you are streaming defenses, look ahead. You could have had Carolina on your roster last week because you knew they were facing the Texans. You look ahead to some matchups if you are streaming quarterbacks and you don't want to be caught having to spend 7-8% on a streaming quarterback and waste your fab. Look ahead to these things. You have to look ahead, especially when we have buys, which we're not far away from. God, I hate buys so much. Why are we still doing the 6-team buys? Math works out fine. We can do 4, 4, 4, 4, 4 and be done, and we still have a 2-week buy or 2-team buy and a 6-week buy. I can't. Anyway, sidebar. I wore this hat for one specific reason. Everybody knows I want the Giants to go 0-17, not 16, and restart this whole organization and from top to bottom. But that being said, I wore the hat because I still root for the players, even though I don't actually root for this guy. But for this week is a streaming option. Although some people are like, of course he's a streaming option. Hello, Tino, as before we came onto the show, is Daniel Jones. But let's be honest, Jeff, it's not such an easy, obvious streaming option in the fact, yes, he's facing the Falcons, but we know what happens if it goes wrong. Like, we understand there's still the potential for 3 fantasy points coming from Daniel Jones, correct?
I mean, hopefully he runs a little bit more than
and fumbles
3 fantasy points. Yeah, fumble that certainly is a possibility. I honestly thought that was maybe the best game we've seen out of Daniel Jones. I know that the passing numbers weren't quite there, but he obviously has a very good thing going with Sterling Shepard. And it's nice to see Sterling Shepard finally maybe reaching the level that we thought coming out of the college level. I'm really happy so far with that. Kenny Golladay, hey, I love that he was yelling at Jason Garrett. To me, that made my day seeing that headline. He's like, "Oh no, I wasn't yelling at Jones. I was yelling at Jason Garrett."
At the clapper.
Yeah, yelling at the clapper. He doesn't appreciate it. So, but then if you get Evan Ingram back in the mix, that certainly helps the cause. You have the field stretcher and Darius Slayton. So there's upside for sure. And if you can continue on with that momentum, Daniel Jones doesn't have to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback for us to be able to use him as a streamer. So I think he is there. You're right. The floor is super low, but the ceiling is also very high. We've seen an enormous ceiling out of him a couple times so far in his career.
Yeah, I think Galladay is pretty frustrated. I don't know if you saw, he was talking about it too, is the fact that we're kind of getting to the Dez level here. Like, I'm open. If I'm telling you I'm open, I'm open. And that's what I said from day one when they signed him, is Daniel Jones isn't that passer. He doesn't like coverage, and he also doesn't play. I was on Chris Harris's pod this morning, Jeff, and I said, there's a difference, and I'm not saying he needs to be Tom Brady and Aaron Jones, because they can fit it into a pinhole. They know how to, like, you throw it to a dime. Still, that being said, you know this, Jeff, from watching as much football as you had. When Kenny Golladay is covered, you can still throw to him, but you don't throw to covered wide receivers in their chest. That's not where you don't throw. That's where you lose it, and that's why Kenny Golladay is frustrated, because he's like, I'm open. Throw it up here, and I'll catch it. Throw it away from my body, and don't throw it to my chest with the defender draped on my back. I'm not going to catch those. And
it's not even Tom Brady or Rodgers. It's Eli Manning could have made those throws.
He did make some of those throws.
Yeah, he made some of those throws. If you have I hesitate to call 50-50 ball, because it's actually about a 60-40 with the defense winning about 60% of the time. Thanks to my former employer over at PFF for that one there. You throw that type of ball, though, to Kenny Golladay, and he's going to win more than 50% because he's a big body guy who knows how to use leverage in those situations. Hopefully that changes. Hopefully they can identify things. But, my worry is a little bit about Jason Garrett, not because I think he stinks. I just think he's so stuck in his ways. Yes. Last year, Evan Ingram is not Jason Witten, so don't use him like Jason Witten. But that's exactly what they were doing. That's why
he signed Kyle Rudolph.
Yeah, exactly. Give me a big, slow white guy.
So you can only see resting. It's resting pit face for Barkley. I'm wearing this too, so it's like kind of double downing with the Daniel Jones and Barkley today. So unfortunately, I had a feeling it wasn't going to fit onto the screen. One more quarterback. We don't usually spend this much time on quarterbacks because we have the whole section about streamers, but these are interesting situations. Jeff, I'm going to present this question to you this way. This is exactly how I'm doing it. Are we ready to trust Derek Carr and then get bit? Because, doesn't that feel like what's going to happen? It's like we finally say, all right, fine, and then he goes out and has 10 points.
It could happen. It could certainly happen. Do they need Derek Carr to win
Kirk
this
Cousins?
game?
Derek Carr or Kirk Cousins?
They're close in rankings. I think I would lean Kirk Cousins, and both of them are not very appealing this week.
I have Cousins one spot in front of Carr.
Yeah,
Derek Carr, Teddy Bridgewater.
Petty.
Okay, Derek Carr or Sam Darnold.
Darnold.
Matt Ryan.
Derek Carr.
But I see, let's be honest. We do this on the show a lot, and I like that you usually are the one that spur that direction and say, let's have this thinking. Let's, do these brain teasers or stuff like that, or brain practices and stuff. At what point, Derek Carr is a good example of this, Jeff. At what point of it's what we know about the player, and then something maybe has changed, and it's like getting out of our window of what we've seen and being able to quote unquote open our eyes and say maybe things are different now. How do we get away from that struggle of saying we've seen so many years of this and maybe it's different now?
It's really hard at quarterback, especially. I think we're still seeing what we've seen out of Derek Carr. I've called him this generation's Phillip Rivers.
Thank you. I did the same thing. Thank you.
We're going to, at the end of the year, we look down and we're like, oh, Derek Carr was quarterback 10 this year. Didn't seem like it along the way, but cool. That's what it's going to be. And one theme that I'm seeing constantly right now is people are chasing last week's fantasy points.
Yes.
It already happened. We need to look forward, not backward. We need to learn from what we just saw and then apply it forward. But we know who Derek Carr is. He's a decent, is he like he's the line in the sand, right? Either you're a good quarterback or a bad quarterback, or you're Derek Carr right in the middle. I feel like this is where we are with him. Now, hey, I love the ball. I love that he pushed the ball downfield to Henry Ruggs. You have an all-world tight end there, but I just don't know if I buy it getting too crazy. Like, there's been a lot. People are asking. We mentioned Tannehill. Drop Tannehill for Derek Carr, and I don't know if I'm there yet.
No, I'm not there yet.
That's
and to chase last week too, and I want to bring Ruggs into this conversation. Is everybody knows I'm the Ruggs guy, like whatever, like, but I'm also like, to your point about chasing last week, is I said that in the waiver column. I said, let's be cautious about this, because if you look at it, they went out there and did everything they could to limit, not stop, Darren Waller. That's why Foster Moreau got a touchdown, which opens things up for Ruggs, which we can hope a lot of teams try to do off the entire season. But, not every single team is going to devote their entire passing defense to stopping just Darren Waller, especially if Ruggs becomes notable enough for defenses to pay attention. And I say that to say, like, I want Ruggs to break out, but I still keep him in the wide receiver 3/4 conversation. I'm not putting him in the wide receiver 2.
Yeah, of course. And if you picked up Hunter Renfrow chasing last week's points, he didn't play a lot.
He's their Cole Beasley.
I said poor man's Tyler Boyd, kind of like that. Maybe Cole Beasley. That'd be good if he was Cole Beasley. Or are you talking Dallas Cole Beasley? Because I think that's a pretty good comp. Not Buffalo.
I'd say somewhere between Dallas and Buffalo, Cole Beasley.
Okay.
He's Cole Beasley 1.5.
There you go.
There you go.
He's been beta tested, and the 1.5.
Yeah,
he's couple errors along the way. We had to update this bad boy. We're not the 2.0 just yet.
No, it's not the refined version completely. All right, so I have this first question in here for you, Jeff, because we don't want to spend a lot of times on RB1s in general. But is there an RB1 this week that you're significantly concerned about? Because maybe you're not, but I think the obvious one to most people would be, Najee Harris so far through 2 games, especially if Ben is hurt.
Well, he managed to bail us out in the passing game last week, so I'm not concerned there. Okay. I think that people are largely concerned about Alvin Kamara. I did have to point this out to somebody in the FTN Discord today. I said, you might want to take a look at this, and I pointed them to last Christmas. That's what Kamara's ceiling is. And last week was a weird game across the board for the Saints. They've been living out of suitcases for the last month. All of their coaches basically were out for that game. So give him a pass on that one. Jonathan Taylor is the one, though, that a lot of people are looking to. Buy low on Jonathan Taylor.
Please.
He got off to a slow start last year. He's still immensely talented on a team that wants to run the football, and he's going to get that football. If his quarterback could avoid spraining every single joint in his body, how do you do 2 ankles in the same game?
I was going to say 2 ankles.
It's unreal. Carson Wentz.
I actually tweeted that out, Jeff, is so goal to go and goal line. So goal to go for everybody out there, 10 yards and in. And then inside the 5 or goal line. That's the disparity. So from True Media, Taylor leads the league. 8 attempts, goal to go, 6 goal line inside the 5. Next closest is Ingram at 6 and 5. And then Derrick Henry, CMC, Chubb, Henderson, and Damian Harris. All those guys are the only ones with 4 or more goal to go. Jonathan Taylor's the only one who hasn't scored yet.
Yeah. And you point those stats out, and I get this with air yards as well, or I get it with end zone throws, end zone targets, all of that stuff. People will say, oh, that's great in my goal to go league, Jake. That ain't the point. It's not the point. The point is opportunity. Air yards is the same thing. Air yards is opportunity. We want to chase opportunity. We don't want to chase fantasy points, because the opportunity is a much more sticky number week over week. If he's down there and he's getting those carries, he's going to keep getting those carries, and eventually they're going to convert. Same thing with the air yards. You're going to keep getting those air yards. Eventually that's going to convert over into actual yards as well. So it's a phenomenal stat, and it's a great indicator of buy low.
Yeah. So, all right, this is an interesting question. This kind of goes right into it. So, Phil Mike just said Mixon or Taylor rest of the season. And I'm Taylor, because similar to this, I actually think Mixon's a great sell high, quote unquote, because of the opportunity so much that I feel like he's peaked. He is leading just behind, well, actually, he's just behind Derrick Henry after what happened last week. But so he's second now in touches. So the opportunity. The one rushing touchdown, he has one, but I really feel like I'm not expecting Joe Mixon to be like Taylor and start to have some positive regression. I know you hate positive, but like for everybody that doesn't.
I don't hate it.
No. Like some people hate to say positive with regression. Like regression's regression. He's gonna have regression up, but you have to specify positive because some people are like, oh, well, regression's always bad, but it's not. So anyway, point being, I feel like Joe Mixon doesn't have that same potential positive regression with the touchdowns. I feel like this is the best Joe Mixon, and that best Joe Mixon is still only RB7.
There are two words that people who play fantasy football largely do not understand and use incorrectly, right? Collusion is one of them. Collusion does not mean unfair trade, okay? And regression is another. Regression is not the opposite of progress. Regression means movement towards the mean, and that could be in an upward direction. Like, I don't know, Aaron Rodgers 2019 to 2020, touchdown productivity. It also could be the other way around. And yeah, I buy in on that. I certainly buy in on that. Moving on from him, no issue on selling high with Joe Mixon, and certainly no issue on buying low on Jonathan Taylor. That's for sure.
All right. So before we move on to the next one, hit a couple of these quick questions. So no Carolina, interesting stream defense, the Cleveland Browns. So I want to bring up this question, Jeff, because this is another thinking question basically behind it. Is yes, I like the Browns and can still like Justin Fields. I can still like the Atlanta Falcons defense and the New York Giants defense, despite not being great defenses and potentially points on the board, because I'm looking for sacks and turnovers. Justin Fields can have a great day and still turn the ball over and potentially get a touchdown. Daniel Jones could have 25 fantasy points and finish as QB5, but still turn the ball over twice and one of them go for a touchdown. I don't love the Falcons defense. I'm just saying there's not a direct correlation where the quarterback has a great day and the defense is automatically a bad one if you're looking for turnover and sack quarterbacks. I'm obviously not starting a defense against Tom Brady who's saying like, okay, I hope I get a turnover.
Yeah, or on the other side, starting against Matthew Stafford. I'm not going to do that either. Yeah, I agree 100% here. I want takeaways. We have an antiquated scoring system for team defense that is just absolutely dreadful.
We've talked
and
about
it is so slanted towards touchdown productivity that we want every quarterback we're facing to channel their inner Blake Bortles and just throw pick sixes all day long. So that's why we're going after the defenses we're going after. Jake, I even stopped doing team defense rankings because there's no point. Really, all I'm going to do is I'm going to recommend the top 3, 4, 5 streamers of the week, and those are the defenses I want to play in a given week. Outside of if there's a year where there is a dominant defense, which I don't know if I'm seeing that right now. So far, I'm not seeing it. There's a dominant defense, you play them every single week. Otherwise, stream. Even if everybody in your league streams, you're still going to be able to get defenses who put up points.
Yeah, I'm with you. Actually, what you're talking about, I don't even have the Buccaneers as a defense one this week because facing Stafford. Like, where's the turnovers, even if the potential happens? All right, so sticking with the running backs, let's talk Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, I brought him up as a worry situation in the waiver column, and then I also brought him up as a sleeper because of this, Jeff. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 100%. We should have some concern, but on the positive side, this is the positive side of Edwards-Helaire. He's getting the vast majority of the touches. You know, the downside is those touches don't include goal line rushes, and they're not involving the passing game. But where I say he's a sleeper, if there's any defense, it's definitely the Cardinals, who have given up already 10 rushes of 10-plus yards. You get past their defensive line, and see you later. If you watch their first 2 games, people are just getting past their linebackers and into the secondary. And that's where I'm shooting for the upside of Edwards-Helaire. And if he has a good game, I'm immediately out. I am selling the hell out of Edwards-Helaire if he has a good game.
You said Cardinals?
Yes.
Am I looking at the wrong thing this week? Cardinals, Jacksonville?
Oh, no. Yes, I did say Cardinals. Sorry.
Somebody today had me on the radio show saying, do I trust DJ Moore tonight? And I literally had to stop and I'm like, is it Wednesday? Or is
it's Chargers, and the stats are correct. It's just the C came into my mind, and so go ahead. Anyway, yes, it is the Chargers are actually second or third in yards after contact to running backs allowed, and then the 10 rushes of 10+ yards. So anyway, sorry, yes, Chargers, you are correct. I misspoke.
The challenge with Clyde Edwards-Helaire is he's a great example of negative correlation, right? When the passing game goes off, he's pretty much not going to do anything, and vice versa for that offense. But the problem is the passing game is going to go off most weeks.
Right.
And like you, yes, I am concerned by what we've seen really from round about the midpoint of last year until now. I am concerned. I expected more. But at the same time, am I using him this week? Of course I am. If I have him, I'm using him as an RB2. I like you, believe in this matchup. And if there is a week to get off the schneid, all it takes, things change very quickly. Remember, Derrick Henry was absolutely shut down in week 1. Week 2, he was the exact opposite, and he was the absolute monster that we remember. So it can turn quickly, and I don't want that to happen on my bench because I got cute and I started Tony Pollard or something like that over Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah, I think that the Tony Pollard situation. Real quick about that, how concerned are you about Ezekiel Elliott?
Not at all.
Okay,
buy low. Buy low.
I'm trying myself. All right, so Tyson Williams situation. Did we get some clarity? Do you feel better after last week? Because I actually compared it to, I think you and I talked about it last week, and I compared him to Myles Gaskin. I said, no, it's not going to be 60, 70%, but it'll at least be 50 with the other guys getting the other 50. Yes, Latavius Murray might steal a goal line carry, but I feel better knowing that my assumption was, in my opinion, like it was correct. It was cleared up by that game.
I think so. It's not a great situation. I think it's going to remain a mess largely for the remainder of the season. And we really can't rule out at some point, Tyson Williams falling out of favor. So if I had him and I could sell him, I would do that right now because I'd like to avoid those types of situations. My eye, I'm not, of course, on this coaching staff. Spoiler alert there. But my eye says that he is the best back in that backfield. He's not a phenomenal back by any means, but he is the most talented, most explosive guy in that backfield. But, not for long in the NFL. And we don't know what the next move is for this team because technically speaking, Freeman is back on the practice squad. He reverts immediately back to the practice squad. So we don't know what their next move even this week is going to be.
Yeah. All right. So let me go to another running back. And do you feel better about this running back? Leonard Fournette, because it's 2 weeks in a row. He's been the more valuable option, even with Ronald Jones getting the start. He was out there first, but definitely Fournette more touches. But Bruce Arians has even mentioned that he doesn't like Ronald Jones not being in place for the pass block, which ruined things on that one play for Tom Brady. Tom Brady is upset, but it's the next level, the fact that Giovanni Bernard's not even involved. So let me give it this way. 1 to 10 confidence scale on Leonard Fournette.
6.
Okay. I mean, for a Bruce Arians running back, I think that's pretty solid.
I've been on Fournette as the preferred, but granted, I had 9th round fantasy draft grade on him, but as the preferred option all along. I just don't buy. Ronald Jones is a classic. The fantasy crowd loves him way more than they should type of player. Now, this week is going to be a really interesting test because you cannot get Tom Brady killed in this game. And I don't know if those both ankle sprains happen on the same play, but did Aaron Donald literally sprain both of Carson Wentz's ankles on the same play? He's capable of doing that and so much more. So that's where I think we actually may see Giovanni Bernard, who is a really good pass blocking running back, but that would be his role. It wouldn't be a fantasy thing. It would be to keep him in and keep Tom clean.
Yeah, I would go that way. One more running back, get some more questions, come back to wide receivers. Daryl Henderson. Now, rib cartilage, sounds like he should be okay. But speaking of that game, who's he facing? The Buccaneers defense. Now, I want to spin it to you a question that I'm not posing. I actually am getting it from Pat Mayo. He actually didn't say the question to me, but he kind of put it out there. He was bringing up Nande Asmoah, and he said, and this is where everybody stay with me with this one because I had the same reaction when Pat said that. I'm like, where are you going with this? And he goes, you remember the Raiders Asmoah? Nobody wanted to throw to him. He was shutting down everybody, and then it was just this. It turned into a respect thing, and then it used to be if you looked at the numbers, he wasn't just even being targeted that much. He gets that giant contract. He goes to the Eagles. People somewhat start throwing to him. They're like, oh my God, he's not good anymore. And that's what he was saying, and that's where he drew the comparison is Are we getting to the point where we're giving the Buccaneers run defense too much respect because a lot of teams don't even attempt to go against them? And then if we have somebody like Henderson, if healthy, who's getting 70% of the workload, that benching them is an overreaction because maybe they're good, but they're not that damn good.
I just quickly Googled Nnamdi Asomugha, who comes up as an American actor, which I did not know. I thought I was right on this because I am in the Philadelphia area, and that was back in my Eagles fandom days. He was 30 years old when he went to Philly, and that was 9 years into the league. So, you're at your expiration date anyway. That was a bad period of time for the Eagles in terms of contracts. Asomugha also was not a shutdown corner. Asomugha played his side very well, but he was not a guy who you would have tracking other or shadowing other receivers. Right. So I don't know if I follow this analogy whatsoever. Well, I will tell you this, though. That run defense is still good.
Okay, well, the point he was making is the mystique outweighed the production. And his point is the mystique of the Buccaneers' run defense outweighing what we should act like when our running backs are facing the Buccaneers' run defense?
I don't think so. Okay. But I also don't.
So would you bench Daryl Henderson this week? That's really what we're getting down to?
No, okay. I'm still going to lean towards volume if he's playing, right? If he's not,
of course.
Sony Michel then, of course, becomes more of a flex option that I'm not going to feel that great about, but the volume at least will be there. But no, I think people. So, again, you say I tell people how to do your job in 3 paragraphs. Okay, well, here's something that I guess we all understand when we're doing rankings, and a lot of people who just look at the rankings don't realize the matchup is embedded in the rankings. That's part of the formula, right? So it's not as if, all right, I'm ranking Daryl Henderson 18, but then the matchup's really bad, so now I have to downgrade him to like 26. No, he's already at 18, 19, 20, wherever he is, because of the matchup and other factors as well, including volume. So no, I wouldn't get too crazy there. I find that that's something that a lot of casual players really put a lot of stock into, and maybe they shouldn't.
Yeah. I get that question a lot too, because I do APA, adjusted points allowed. And I know you eat the same thing with FTN and everything like that, but I get the same question. It's like, well, is that in the rankings? Like, yeah, that's part of it. I don't do the rankings without it. It's baked in there already. And I got that question this week, like, is Deontay Johnson, do you have him there because of Ben Roethlisberger's situation? It's like, yeah, it's already in there. Like, that's why. Like, I don't know what Ben's like, and it might be Mason Rudolph, and even if Ben starts, it might be Rudolph before the end of the game. And Ben's also not looked that great. I mean, honestly, the being able to know what you're getting with Mason Rudolph might be better than trying to not know what you're getting with Ben Roethlisberger for them. But that's a real NFL standpoint, and their situation is a mess. That's what happens when you ignore the quarterback situation forever. I'm going to hit some of these questions real quick before we get to it. Hey, here's what: would you go Daniel Jones over Tannehill? I think we were both saying Daniel Jones, right?
Yeah, barely, but yeah.
Okay. Do you trade David Montgomery and Sanders? Okay, well, I thank you for putting the question up there. Montgomery and Sanders for JT. If it's Emmanuel, absolutely. If it's Myles, I want Jonathan Taylor because he's the best player, but I say no. I'm not giving up 2 running backs for a running back, or 2 RB2s for a RB1 just yet.
Here's a classic example of somebody only looking at their starters. Because they probably are going to tell you, oh, well, I'm only using Sanders as a flex, and I have this wide receiver. You can never have enough depth. You can never have
especially
enough
running
depth.
Back.
And yeah, especially here, you have 2 top 20 guys. I'm not making that trade. I agree. Yeah, Manuel Sanders, do it. Absolutely do it. Accept immediately or whatever you got to do to get it done, but not Myles Sanders.
Here's an interesting one. Najee Harris or Antonio Gibson for the rest of the season. Who would you rather?
I would say Gibson. It's so close, though.
And
I know that's not a popular take because a lot of people are down on Gibson, but he had 38 touches already this season, 19 per game.
I think the biggest concern is just this team refuses to use him in the passing game, and especially the 2-minute drill. And that I don't get it. Like, what do we sit here and say, Jeff? The dude comes out of college and it's like he's basically a receiver. Can he be a lead running back? They get the answer, and then they're like, "Well, never mind. We're not going to use him as a pass." It's Phil Lindsay all over again.
He's not playing wide receiver. He's playing running back, and he has no clue what he's doing back there. It's a totally different position.
Should I start Myles Gaskin or Javonte Williams? I think this is an interesting one.
I have Gaskin ahead, especially given the snap distribution between Gordon and Javonte Williams last week.
Yeah, I'll tell you right where I have him. I do have Gaskin ahead of both Denver running backs,
Me
but
too.
I think both of them are usable against the Jets this week, especially if Zach Wilson's going to continue throwing picks. Good God, 4 picks. Woof. Let's see if anything else before we get back to the conversation that we had. Do you prefer Fields over Lawrence rest of the season? 100,000%, because even if Fields looks like Lawrence has as a passer so far, at least he's going to run for 50 yards.
I was hoping for more out of Lawrence so far with his legs. They're going to have a lot of game scripts where he's going to throw a lot. I mean, we do have that, but I just don't buy in on anything that team is doing. It just seems like either they're trying to, I don't know, like, what do they do if they're first overall again? I guess they have to trade out of that spot because you have Lawrence. You're not going to take whoever is going to be, because it's going to be a quarterback again. You know, with this class coming up, it's going to be another quarterback. I just don't buy in on it. Not that I love Matt Nagy, but I do like the situation for Fields a lot.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. Barkley is leaning up on her paws inside the bin with her toys, and she just fell face first into the bin because her paw slipped. Anyway, that's why I'm laughing over here. All right, I want to go back to this list, and this is exactly how I'm posing the question to you, Jeff. After 2 weeks, if you've watched the Chargers, and I'm going to steal from Chris Harris because how many times we've done how many shows together and how many times have I said this to you because I use it all the time. I said, take the names off the jerseys. Mm-hmm. So he kind of said that without saying that to me. You watch 2 games of the Chargers and you would say Mike Williams is the better wide receiver. You would say that if you had never seen.
But do I watch who's covering the other receiver?
Sure. But
because
Trayvon
Diggs is in the midst of a breakout season, and I did not anticipate shadow coverage. And then I watched that game back, and I'm like, oh, wow, he is all over the place with Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
Okay, and that actually made Keenan Allen's stat line that much more impressive for me this past week. But that being said, Mike Williams is kind of the guy we expected finally.
So how high is too high for Mike Williams? Top 20?
I think that's too high. I have him at 25 right now. Top 20 is too high, but we're not that far away, but it is only 2 games so far.
Why do you hate Mike Williams?
I hate him so much. I'm going to cut him for who?
Darius Slayton.
Michael Pittman. Oh, Darius Slayton. There you go. Even more.
I was just trying to think of something.
Cut him for Tony Jones. How about that?
Tony Jones. People yelled at me when I said he was cuttable if you need, like, shallow leagues. I said shallow leagues. If you need to cut Tony Jones to pick up help, he's just basically a backup like an A.J. Dillon. Because everybody wants to drop A.J. Dillon, but when you say Tony Jones, oh my God, what the hell? Like, it's the same situation.
Why did we draft A.J. Dillon? Do we really think A.J. Dillon was going to be a startable level fantasy option? Because that's, I think, something we have to, hey, we learn, Jake, I equate this to like the guy who plays golf like three days a year, right? That guy who plays golf is going to go out and shoot like 120 every time, spraying the ball all over the place, missing putts. They stink. They'll never get any better. Well, if you only draft 3 times a year in fantasy football, 3 home league drafts. I'm not talking with ADP right in front of you that makes it nice and easy. Put a sticker on a board, a real draft, and you're only doing it 3 times a year and you're not writing down your mistakes, you're never going to get any better. If you drafted A.J. Dillon thinking he was anything more than a premium handcuff, you drafted him for the wrong reason. So just write it down. Write that down for the future. Know the premium handcuffs and expect to just have them on your bench until the starter gets hurt. And if it doesn't happen, they're on your bench.
Yeah, and don't have multiples. I think that's the biggest thing too. Is like you don't want, if you have 3 running backs on your bench, you don't want them to be A.J. Dillon, Chuba Hubbard, and Tony Jones. That's that. So yeah. Real quick, James White or no? Yeah, James White or Chase Claypool this week. I think with the situation. Ooh. I'm just going James White. No, Tino, I wasn't putting it up there for a reason. Take it back down. And Tino's probably laughing now. Which I think I bring up James White for this reason. I think and this is the conversation I have most weeks, and this was actually in the intro of one of the things of trying to explain our brands, is when they're that close, the running back is always going to be your safe. If you just want to go get 6-7 fantasy points, maybe James White scores again, short, but no, if you just want the save points, it's the running back. There's guaranteed touches there. Claypool could come out with a 0, or he could get you 20. So what do you want? Do you want the upside? You go Claypool. Do you want James White? Then you go with the safety.
Is Mason Rudolph actually better for Chase Claypool than Ben Roethlisberger, whatever arm? Ben Roethlisberger might as well be thrown left-handed at this point.
I don't think he's better, mostly because it's still the snaps. I keep going back. I have 0 shares of Chase Claypool. I'm not victory lapping the hell out of Chase Claypool 2 weeks in, but I don't have him anywhere. And people are telling me I have him too low because of the snaps. He's third. He's not even. It's not like last year's Carolina Panthers where it was 50 snaps, 48 snaps, 44 snaps. So it's like, okay, we don't really care. This is like 50-50 and then 38. Claypool's just not on the field enough.
Yeah, that's a problem. It's definitely a problem. The issue I have with James White, and it's the reason why I wasn't on him last week, and I'm fine with, hey, okay, he scored. He was a good fantasy option. He's not going to catch 5 or 6 balls every week, because if he did, right, that would be a record. The problem with a back like him is that if he catches those 5 or 6 balls, yes, he looks great. He's a top 20 or top 15 or even better fantasy running back. If he doesn't, and it's 1 or 2 catches, and he has 4 carries for 8 yards, you're going to be banging your head against the wall starting him or starting. This was Giovanni Bernard in the past. This was Chris Thompson in the past. All of that type of player. Duke Johnson. That profile is just not optimal for fantasy purposes. So I do agree in this instance, you may have to lean that direction, but I don't love James White for the long haul.
Okay. One more before we get back to our list here. I saw it go by. I want to go back up to it real quick. Tyson Williams and James White for Najee Harris, 1,000%. Tyson Williams and James White for Saquon Barkley, 1,001%. Because I wanted to bring up the Saquon Barkley thing. I see a lot of people panicking, and he was on the field fourth. That's actually the entire NFL of running backs. He was out there 4th most in week 2. The reins are done. They're off. I will admit he's not 100% yet, but if you have the reins off Barkley, even at 90%, I have him as a top 15 running back this week.
Me too. And he faced a very good run defense that we can't downplay in that contest. It was a weird game script as well. I mean, who would have thought that Taylor Heineke could go out and do what he did in that game? And he ripped off a long run. Like, that was him. And he even said after the fact, that now that's a confidence builder. That obviously mentally he's not even fully there. And sometimes we forget about that aspect. It's not just physical. If you go through anybody,
Joe Burrow.
Jake, I stubbed my toe, and that lingers for days. Like, these are debilitating, devastating injuries, and they are kids as well. We often forget. So it lingers in their minds for some of them. Some of them put it past it, like Dak Prescott's like, oh, I was dancing on the Cinco de Mayo, and it's all good. Not the case with Saquon. It's obviously still there. He commented on it, but that run was a confidence booster, and I've waited. There's going to be a signature game coming very soon, because it's not like he forgot how to play football. He's still really stinking good.
No, the other one would be like Adrian Peterson. You literally take his knee away, and he's like, all right, I'm back. It's no problem. I'm just going to run for 2,000 yards and lead the NFL. It's cool. All right, so Brandon Cooks. I've been loving the hell out of Brandon Cooks. You know that. But no Tyrod Taylor this week. It is Davis Mills. I will say this about Davis Mills, Jeff, is no, I don't think he's as good for Cooks as Taylor is. That being said, he made some throws that he looks like he could step in, at least be Mason Rudolph. And if you told me Mason Rudolph was starting for the Texans, I'm still going to have Brandon Cooks as a wide receiver 3.
And there's nobody else there. Nico Collins out for a while. Danny Amendola out for a while.
Yeah, they're
Somebody
down
to catch the football.
They're Chris Conley and Andre Roberts as the next 2 and 3 because Anthony Miller's still not back.
Yeah, so somebody has to catch the football. And, hey, David Johnson, he'll be in the mix too. Boy, is that a boring team right there. Yeah, he's going to see a lot of volume just for this reason. Davis Mills it's a concern. What was it, 12 starts at the college level? He barely played there. We don't know much about him other than what we saw. And at the same time, I'm intrigued enough here that I still have Cooks as a wide receiver 3. I have him at 30 right now, which I think you're going to have to use him if you have him, very likely.
Let's see where I have Brandon Cooks. I'm at 25, so obviously you hate Brandon
Why
Cooks.
do you love Brandon Cooks?
I know. What do I love him and you hate him? So it's insane. What the hell's wrong with us? Hey, let's talk about this one. I love buying low on this guy. So I preface this with, this is why I go back and watch games. You do the same. This is why I go back and watch games. This is why I pull up the metrics and stats and go look for things, because what do we know? And this is how I presented it. I talked about it on another show, Jeff. I don't remember which one. But I said, the Carolina Panthers, 2 years ago, it was Robby Anderson goes deep, DJ Moore's underneath. Last year, it flipped. Everybody knows that by now. Everybody knows that it flipped, and DJ Moore was going downfield a lot more. The A-dot was there, the air yards, whatever you use. Robby Anderson was used more over the middle of the field in shorter passes. They were both still good. They alternated games with Curtis Samuel, and then everybody got excited for this year. And, hey, Curtis Samuel is down to 2. Through the first 2 games, he hasn't had many targets, 4. He's got the 1 catch for the touchdown. But all that being said is that I went in there thinking, all right, we're looking at last year again. So let me go look at this. Let me go look at Robby Anderson, because if he's only getting 3-4 targets through 2 games, 5 targets through 2 games, and he's not going downfield and he's doing the underneath stuff like last year, I mean, how can you even start Robby Anderson? So I went and looked, Jeff, and I watched the games, and I'm like, he's not running those routes. And then I checked air yards, and air yards per target, he's top 5. He's actually 3rd, because they are sending him downfield again. So buy low, in my opinion, on Robby Anderson. And if you need a wide receiver 4 with ceiling, I think he's actually even startable this week.
There are legit people out there who are dropping Robby Anderson, and that should not be happening. It's 2 weeks. I know it especially hurts if it's 2 weeks and you're 0-2, but it's 2 weeks. And that was really kind of the preseason. A lot of these guys didn't play in the preseason, so we just saw the preseason over the last 2 weeks with Robby Anderson, with any of these guys. And plus the weather's warm all over the place. It's just different football than we see for the rest of the year. I agree with you 100%. If you can get them on the cheap. And then plus, I mean, I always have a soft spot for anybody who went to Temple University. So we get that with Robby Anderson right there. I think there's still so much potential. And you know what's weird, Jake? People want to roster Terrace Marshall, who is not on the field anywhere near as much as Robby Anderson, over Anderson in some situations. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I'm completely with you on that one. So speaking of a similar situation, I like that. That pushes us right next into the conversation with the Arizona wide receivers, because not being on the field is Rondell Moore. But when he's on the field, it's almost like the Arizona Cardinals are out there like, okay, we're not going to put you on the field until we definitively want you to have the ball. Like, he's just out there getting the ball, because he's not just half the snaps of A.J. Green. He's like 2/3 of the snaps of Christian Kirk. He is 4th out of wide receivers, which is also behind Max Williams with 2 X's, and I think he's even behind Chase Edmonds. But all that being said, when he's out there and getting the ball, all that. And Jeff, I've said this before, I don't ever like taking plays away from players. I think that's a mistake to do that. Like, Derrick Henry ran off a 50-yard touchdown. If you take that away, he only had 65 yards. That's who he is.
Take it away.
But all that being said, that touchdown was complete blown coverage. So which side are you on Rondell Moore? Are you on Rondell Moore like, hey, look, I know the snaps aren't there, but the production is there when he's out there? Or is this a sell high opportunity and you would still put him behind Kirk in this situation? Because this is probably the most confusing situation for anybody playing fantasy right now.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things here. A lot of people went out, spent a bunch of fab on Kirk last week, only to now want to drop him this week.
For Rondell Moore, if you didn't get more.
Well, yeah, exactly. Why did we pick up Kirk? Well, he's their deep ball target. He's the guy who's going to very likely end the season with the highest A-dot of that group. So you have volatility, but upside. Second thing, in the preseason, this happened as well. There was the one preseason game where he played 6 snaps and he touched the ball on all 6 snaps. Like, this is not necessarily a fluke for Moore and the ball finding him when he's on the field. He's electric. The kid is small, but he is one of the best pound for pound athletes that we've seen in a while. I mean, and he's not that heavy, so I guess that's a little bit of a joke, but still, he's amazing. He's a freak of nature athlete. At the same time, he is the number 4 receiver, Jake. And I agree with you 100% on that, that it is a big cause for concern. The last time I remember a receiver like this, who was the number 4 on his team, who was putting up numbers, was Chris Godwin. Now, Chris Godwin, that year, I kept throwing out, like, I'm a little nervous here because this could go away at any second. And the people's argument back was, oh, look at the production, look at the production. I don't want to chase production necessarily, efficiency necessarily with wide receivers. I want to chase routes run and then target volume, those two things. And we're not there yet with Rondale Moore. But that's not to say A.J. Green goes out and gets hurt, or they just say, hey, we're a better team with Moore on the field.
Yep.
So I want him on my bench. I just can't use him this week with any confidence.
Would you let me throw this one out here? We talked about him earlier in the show. If you had a straight up trade Rondale Moore for Kenny Golladay,
I'd get Kenny Golladay. Yeah, I'd buy low on Kenny Golladay. Absolutely.
And I think that's the opinion and the thought process people need to have. And a lot of people would just be like, no, there's no way on earth I make that trade. But that's the thinking that you should be going with this. So I completely agree with you. Two quick questions before we get to the one tight end I want to talk about before we get our potential streamers of the week. Actually, no, this isn't even a question real quick, but Rondell Gill, last year was Fulgham, this year is Heineke. Actually, you're forgetting Zach Pascal, who's the ODU guy to watch for next year. And the answer to that is, no, we don't have anybody at ODU. We haven't had anybody at ODU since Heineke. Heineke was 7 years ago. Pascal was after him. Fulgham was after him. O'Shane Zimenez is on the Giants, but he's barely in the rotation, so there's nobody else from ODU. The one you need to watch is my one school that I went to for 1 year is Malik Willis, who could potentially be that first number one pick quarterback off the board. By the way,
yes.
ODU defender secondary called him out. I was like, I don't think he's that good. You know what Malik Willis did in that game against ODU? He threw for 4 touchdowns, ran for 2 before the end of the third quarter. He said, screw you, buddy. You want to call me out? You might want to shut the hell up. Rob Gronkowski. He's obviously not going to catch a touchdown every 3 receptions. That's not going to happen. But I mean, Rob Gronkowski, top 6-7 tight end within the realm of are we at the point now where it's like, you know what? It's just face facts. Rob Gronkowski is going to be the red zone guy more weeks than not.
Yes, and then when we look back and he catches 34 touchdowns this season, we're at the point where if you have one of these 7 guys, I think you're a set and forget. If you don't, you're screwed, basically. Like Max Williams will outscore the tight end that you start, or whoever. Jack Doyle's outscore the tight end you start. So ready? It's Kelsey, it's Waller. We know that. It's Hawkinson now. He deserves to be in that conversation after the volume, and that's not going anywhere. It's Kittle. Somebody said to me that Kittle was terrible in week 1. He was not terrible in week 1. Please go back and watch the game, and don't just look at the fantasy points. And even the fantasy points were fine. He was top 10 for the week. It's Mark Andrews. He's still up there. He's tied to Lamar very much so, but I still buy in on him as a set and forget. It is Kyle Pitts. The volume has been there, and I'm confident in Kyle Pitts.
And he's playing wide receiver.
And it's Rob Gronkowski. At this point.
So not Noah Fant.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. He's now he is at the top. So I have Noah Fant at 8 for the week. But I don't feel overly confident every single week starting him. That could change for sure. But Gronk honestly looks really good. It's not. Hey, he was one of the best to ever play, but he also retired for a reason. He's up there north of 30 when a lot of players start to break down, and he's always been injury prone. But so far, so good. And Brady looks absolutely phenomenal.
He does. I'm laughing because David Funkhouse, there's a callback to Monday I was doing with Chris Meany. I was saying, if you're streaming tight ends, go pick up Chicken Fryermuth. And then I said Pat Air Fryermuth. And then I was making a bunch of Fryer jokes. So I appreciate that he said, what about Chicken Fryermuth? Yeah, look, he's already in front of Eric. If you have Eric Ebron, just drop Eric Ebron and start streaming your tight ends. I will only stream Fryermuth if Roethlisberger's out there and in good matchups. I think he might be the one that, hey, second half of the season, all of a sudden we're talking about him as top 15. I don't think he's quite there yet. There was another mention of Higbee. I like Higbee for a bounce-back week this week, but the problem is they're running a lot of 3 wide, and it's more so it's not that Higbee's not out there. Higbee is actually, I don't know if you know this, Jeff, he's actually top 5 in snaps on the field for wide receivers, running backs, and tight ends. It's just that when they're running the 3 wide, a lot of times he's not running a route. So that's the issue with Higbee not being there. Would you start any San Francisco running back this week after we've seen what just happened? And let me throw this in here. Would you take a flyer in a 14-plus league deep bench on Jacques Patrice?
I have already taken a flyer on him in a 12-team league, very competitive, deep FTN staff league where 8 bench spots. I needed something, and I got him. So I was happy about that. What do we know about him? Well, Jake, tell me you are a fantasy football nerd especially, but a football nerd without telling me you're a football nerd. I played in an XFL season-long fantasy league where he was on my roster. So I know that if you're a Florida State person, you already know. Dude is big. He's like the anti-Matt Breida. He's an enormous human being for a running back, and I don't know what to expect there. But they did sign him to the roster over Kerryon Johnson, so that's saying something. But I really think
I pointed that out, that they signed him straight to the roster and not to the practice squad.
Exactly, and I think that means that JaMychal Hasty's not going to play for a while. We know that. High ankle sprain, 4 to 6 weeks. Trey Sermon, that hit was brutal. I don't think Trey Sermon plays.
They say concussion. I'm surprised there's not like a neck thing going on too.
It looks serious. Yeah, that was a scary hit because, especially the way his head was on the hit, that was scary. So I think it tells us Trey Sermon's not going to play this week. So you are going to be left with Elijah Mitchell. You have Trenton Cannon, who I always want to forget his name, and then the new guy.
Good reason.
Who's going to touch the ball? It's Elijah Mitchell, who has been described as day-to-day.
Yeah.
So I am fine with that. He almost had 20 touches last week as well. So I'm fine with that. And you're not going to face a good Eagles defense every single week.
No, you're not. And that's interesting on top of that. I was seeing if we got any news real quick before we get out of here. Demaric Crockett signed off the practice squad to the active roster for the Broncos. Is there something going on with Melvin Gordon or Javonte Williams? That seems interesting if that happened. But before we get out of here, the only one I want explanation on. So for our streamers, Daniel Jones was mine at quarterback. We already talked about him in depth. We talked Higbee. You mentioned Evan Ingram when we were talking about Daniel Jones. So the only one we didn't really touch on is your quarterback streamer, Sam Darnold, this week.
Yeah, I think he's played good football so far. I love the scheme. I love when you have, the greatest weapon in football right now in Christian McCaffrey on the field. And the receivers, and to a lesser extent, Dan Arnold's he's workmanlike, but he's not bad. Overall, everything you have there works to your favor. Plus the fact that you have very nice matchup here. He is not you stream him and he finishes top 5. I don't think he does what Taylor Heineke did last week, even perhaps. But if you need safe points, you need a top 15 type week. I think you can start Darnold. Kind of call it a day. He's very likely going to be available in 1 quarterback leagues. Obviously, in 2 quarterback leagues, he's in the mix as a starter. So it's a matchup play where the one challenge, though, is if game script does get out of hand.
I would agree with you. Let's fire off. We got 2 minutes to get some of these quick questions in. Are you dropping Shenault? Here's the same situation of Ronald Moore. He's third. Chase Claypool, too, and significantly third. This offense is not the Arizona Cardinals offense, but I will say I'm not outright dropping them. Of course, there's always context there.
Yeah.
It's 10-team, though, Jeff, so I think you might have better options out there than Shenault.
Oh, yeah, 10-teamer, yes. If I'm in a regular bench size 12-teamer, probably holding on to him because there's not much out there. But, yeah, 10-teamer, there's going to be guys out there who you could pick up.
All right. Are you going with Aguilar or Cephas this week, Jeff? And I'm bringing this one up because, I know you chuckled, but I want to bring in Travis Fulgham because last year, and yes, at ODU, a lot of times when you have familiarity, especially with your school, or this is why we turn to beat writers, is knowing more because I've watched a hell of a lot more. I said Travis Fulgham was the thing before anybody else. I also, Jeff, and I don't know if you remember, I said it to a lot of people, I was one of the first people to say, get the hell off the train, because once he was treated as the number 1, he's not that level of talent. So he was exciting when defense didn't know, and I bring up Cephas for that same reason. Cephas was fun. But if you saw Cephas in the second half and the defense started moving a little bit of coverage his way, he struggled in the second half. All that being said, I think Hawkinson brings enough if the targets are there for Cephas to be a wide receiver 4, but not anything better than that.
Is Tyrell on the field too? I think that's the other question we have.
They already said he's not going to play again this week.
So if he's not going to, I missed that news. So if he's
he's been ruled out. Wide receiver 4 for Cephas?
Essentially, but there's volatility because my worry is that even at wide receiver 4, you could still be the 4, or as the top wide receiver, you could still be the fourth wide receiver or fourth target. I swear I can talk because Hawkins is guaranteed to be the first target. Then you have the two running backs who both can catch the ball out of the backfield. So in the wrong game, that doesn't end up being very good. I just don't want to trust 1 week of production. So Cephas, do I pick him up? Sure. He was in my waiver recommendations, but Jake, I always say this. I'd rather have a guy go off on my bench than put up a dud in my starting lineup. If I'm really unsure about a player, I'm going to go the safer route. I'm going to go the route where I think I can get the most possible points and then leave the guy on the bench. And if he goes off, then great. I have him. I'm a week ahead of everybody else, and we take it from there. So I think that's how I'll approach Cephas this week.
All right. Well, fair enough in there. So it's Jeff Ratcliffe at Jeff Ratcliffe. Check out his work at FTN, 20% off code all in. theathletic.com/BetsTV, all capitals. You can get a first free month to answer questions over there. I know I didn't get to some of these questions. If you want to drop them in on YouTube, by the way, please do the thumbs up, subscribe, all that stuff. But if you want to drop into the YouTube comments, I'll try and check them either later tonight or Thursday and try to jump to some over there if you're not dropping them already into the comments over at The Athletic. But we'll be back on Monday for the recap with meeting at 10 a.m. Next week, again, the ranking show always 2 p.m. on Wednesdays. We love you guys. Good luck in week 3.